are mean to each other.
It's to be
So when I tell one, don't tell your sister you got this, it's even more of an incentive. Like one of the
No, but it looked like the turnout Saturday was really good.
It was really, really good.
Dad loves me more.
There were just a lot of people ready to get out.
That's the one thing.
Unfortunately, Saturday's weather held off till Sunday.
It's like pure sugar. Yep.
Sean, I didn't see a door cup in your hand when you was standing there.
Yeah.
We promised
You told me you got one both hands, one each hand.
I was counting on the DDVB interns to be.
Oh, they weren't
making
very
those
good
runs.
at
They
it?
just weren't doing
Okay.
it.
They aren't old enough.
We had great volunteers, we just didn't have enough of those volunteers. We did not have door on.
Sure, why not, sir? Maybe your pastor will show up and save me again.
Tag.
No, just.
No, I don't think so. This evening.
2 cup helmets.
Yeah, I remember those.
I think he'll be here just a little late. You tell him if he doesn't make the pledge, he can't vote.
What?
That's not right.
You ruled you didn't know about.
That's not right.
I didn't even know Shaper's old house was for sale.
It was like, conversation.
Oh,
All of a sudden, said something to somebody, then all of a sudden, the person calls them and says, you wanna sell it? We'll give you. Okay,
yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
All the houses
Wasn't
down
even-
there
wasn't
just
even
sell
a
like they're up for more than a week.
Yeah, we were talking to her, one weekend and all of a sudden she says, oh, we're moving. Oh, what happened? Oh, we just mentioned to somebody that we wanted to sell our house and all of a sudden goes, how much you want? Or this will, okay, fine, take it.
I'm glad to see somebody's finally doing something with,
Westrig's,
Westrick's old house.
Yeah,
I
Well, he's
know.
tearing walls out and everything
We're
there.
not
he put an extension on the side, didn't he?
waiting.
Yeah, you put a bedroom or a bathroom off the back or
Or
something.
that deck and all that goofy shit up
Cool.
there, that looks good.
That's a nice,
It's a nice little
it's a
house.
nice solid location.
Cute little house.
People
And
tried to buy
somebody's
that for
working
years,
on
Bob would never
Ruth
sell it.
Wilcox's
sell it
old
now.
house too.
All right,
Thank
we're there in
goodness.
about a minute.
That's what's happened to a lot of houses with a lot of the stuff that they see on
What do you know?
TV.
It's
Imagination. They just give you
If they can afford the
60,000,
material.
40,000 and-
nice to see you.
If you can get the material, that's the other thing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
But I'm gonna live right now. Something.
You're off the hook again.
I can't find anybody
It's your turn
that
next time.
can do it within 2 months.
I
had
sat there twice.
gravel work in my house.
No one will
Inside,
show
you know,
that time, I'm
patching,
sure.
so nothing major.
All right,
The end of August is the earliest you can get to it.
Yeah.
Really?
let's see Todd.
And some of them, like old Johnny Hurst, I think he just quit working because he couldn't get any help. He's got enough rentals, he don't think he owns a lot.
All right, beginning underway in 10. Since Mr. Engel isn't here, I won't count down second by second. He's not here to be irritated.
He hates that.
3, 2, 1. Good evening and welcome to the Defiance City Council meeting for tonight, May 11th, 2021. As always, we have a local pastor open us up in prayer. Tonight we have Pastor Matt Parks from King's Cross Church. Welcome to our meeting tonight, Pastor Parks.
Thanks, Dave. Good evening, everybody. I just want to pray from Psalm 33, just a couple of passages. So let's pray. The Lord brings the counsel to the nations to nothing. He frustrates the plans of the peoples. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the plans of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people whom he has chosen as his heritage. Lord, we come to you this evening and we are appealing that you are the Lord of all counsel, Lord, that you are the Lord of all wisdom, and Lord, this group of men and women that are meeting together, Lord, for the business of our town, of our community here, Lord, I pray that you'll give them wisdom, that they will seek your counsel, Lord, for the for the good of the residents here in Defiance and surrounding areas. But God, I pray that you'll grant them wisdom on how to carry out, just even down to some of the more maybe even mundane tasks that need to get done, Lord, that are still vital for cohesiveness in our community. So Lord, I pray that you'll give them wisdom. I pray that they can all come together and have unity as a group to come and meet the needs of the people in this community. So God, we pray that your name will be upheld, that your counsel will be sought, and it's in your holy and precious Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for coming this evening. I call this meeting to order. Let the record show that a quorum of City Council is here. Mr. Engel is on the way and called ahead to say he may be running a bit late. In fact, let the record show that all members of council are present. Would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any requests for liaison meetings or any reports? Do we have any comments from council this evening? Mr. Uresti.
Any idea when we might be having a street and sidewalk meeting on some of the monies that you might want to spend that we might get from the CARES Act or additions for anything potential on the streets, sidewalks, or any other projects that you want to do? I think we talked about that probably about a month ago or so.
The guidance was actually just released yesterday. Kind of still deciphering kind of the summary of the guidance seemed somewhat specific and a little bit maybe restrictive. There's about 150 pages of detail that we're sorting through, and then of course we suspect guidance will be amended as time goes along. We're not there in that discussion yet.
Okay.
But we will be, and we'll be coming to you with some of that discussion, obviously. Originally, we thought the city would be receiving money directly from the U.S. Treasury. Municipalities that fall below 50,000, in fact, will not get their money directly from the Treasury. That money will go through the state first, and we'll get it from Columbus, probably according to a population-based formula. I think it'll be still in the ballpark, if not exactly what the original estimates were, but that remains to be seen. But yeah, we're just not there yet. It's literally came down yesterday, late yesterday.
I have one other question.
Sure.
Also, Mayor McCann, we had talked a while back in regards to the community gateways. And if we do have a discussion that maybe we can include that as to whether we're going to be doing any improvements of when people enter our community, how we can highlight those areas so it makes it a little bit more welcoming when people come into from Clinton Street, sidewalks, Commerce or Carpenter Road, any of those areas that need to be improved, those types of things, as far as that can be termed as gateways, entrances. Maybe we can talk about those areas.
Certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Engel.
Yeah, I think I'll probably ask Sean this, maybe whoever can answer this. We had a couple of people call about around there by Dollar General, where they're at Cleveland Avenue there, where there's like telephone poles, and they're probably only about 2 or 3 feet from the highway. And is that legal to be that close?
Well, the utilities would have an easement wherever they are. If that's going to be moved, I mean, those discussions would have to be
it's
had with
about
ODOT.
this far from the road.
Well, that intersection is going to be improved with a roundabout
Could it be
area.
moved back then?
I'll have to check and see if, what the plans are for the poles. My guess is they would probably be taken back.
Yeah, because man, they're real close now. I didn't know if that was, I was hoping it wasn't gonna stay there because that's real
Yeah,
close.
that whole intersection will change and be shifted more
Yeah,
toward
it's-
the east.
It's past a little bit about where Dollar General is, and as you're coming into town, some of them are there too.
Okay.
So, okay, thanks.
Mr. Hancock?
Yeah, I just have a few things. Just to verify that the city tax deadline is that Friday,
It's actually Monday,
Monday?
the
Okay.
17th, yes.
Okay, thank you. I heard a lot of praise about the Lilac Festival, thanks to the DDVB as well as our community, for putting that together. A lot of good compliments, great turnout, it was very nice. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, could we have someone look into the curb, the shoulder at 2240 Power Dam? It's just outside, or just past the, Bronson Park, next to the Harding Bridge. When you go around the edge there, there seems to be a lot of ruts off the asphalt. And if we could have somebody look at that, either widen the asphalt or put something in there, that would be great.
Pass that on to our service department.
That's all I have.
Thanks. Yeah, any other comments from council? There's nothing on my desk this week, but Mayor McKinn.
Thank you. I too wanted to pass on accolades to the DDVB. Kirsty Mack's here tonight on the Dora District, but I think it was a beautiful day. Thank you to Mother Nature for that, and thank you for all her efforts. Behind the scenes, it is a lot of work putting that all together. And that's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard.
Two things. One is the expenditure of a tree contract to Goliath Tree and Lawn Service for the amount of $22,000. And the other issue is just to inform council that I know there's been a lot of activity in the downtown area, but one crucial item that we're looking at is right turn on red, especially at 2nd Street, because a lot of times what you're seeing is vehicles will be not stopping. It's somewhat sight restricted there. We've had some pedestrian accidents in the downtown area where people just aren't paying attention. And these cars are not stopping, they're trying to beat the traffic, and they're coming out and pulling out and going northbound. They do the same thing on 1st Street. And when I say we're going to look at it, we are going to look at that issue. There's a number of things that we can do to maybe combat that a little bit. We will look at enforcement of those intersections. Obviously, that'll be an important part of it. The overall thing that I want to stress, though, is that we have to keep our pedestrians safe. And when people don't comply with the law, it's right turn on red, but you must stop. And there's some sight restrictions as you see that traffic going northbound where people are just trying to beat it and pull out. And as they're looking to their left and these pedestrians are crossing, they're pulling out in front of them. And it's a problem. We're going to look at it and evaluate it. So I just wanted to let council inform them of some of the things that we're concerned about and looking at the downtown area, but that's certainly one of them.
Are you talking about just the turning right going north, or are you talking about the right going like east?
Generally speaking, I would say it's turning right going north.
Because those both have right turn arrows anyway, correct?
Right. Well, they do, but sometimes when they're not on and these vehicles are approaching that right turn lane, they will take a quick look to the south, and they're just going, and they're not stopping. The light could be red. They're still doing it.
I know a
We're
lot
seeing
of
some
the
of that
accidents
activity.
I've ever been on over there was people turning right onto Second Street. Off of Clinton.
Yeah, same
That's-
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
same.
where I see,
Right.
well, we've had a couple people hit right there too at
Right.
that time, so. More so than going north, it was actually going.
So we're gonna pull some information, we're gonna pull some accident reports from the police department, we're gonna take a look at it, and we'll see if we're going to modify it, but I just wanted to make sure that council was informed that we're gonna be studying those concepts in the downtown area.
Mr. Engel?
Jeff, one thing on that, would you think that maybe have anything with people doing that, is the street lights going north and south is so darn long? Could that be adjusted somehow that they wouldn't have to do that?
Anytime you change the lights, okay, you're going to change other intersections as well. And it's really difficult to synchronize and get the timing, because you adjust something at that intersection, say at Second and Clinton, and you're gonna create some queue problems elsewhere in the other intersections.
I guess I'm not just saying doing it that one, but maybe doing it all of them for north and south or downtown, just to change that a little bit.
Well,
Would that help?
Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, from a number of years ago, the entire corridor from North 66 all the way through town, if you were traveling 35 miles an hour, I think it was said that
You could hit them all.
you could, well, you could actually drive straight through, okay? But obviously, we can control those intersections, and we do, and that'll be part of the evaluation process as well.
Just thought I'd ask. Thanks.
That's it. Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell?
I have nothing at this time.
Mr. Leonard?
I have nothing else this evening.
Thank you. Now, we do have 5 items for discussion this evening. Our first item for discussion is an ordinance authorizing the expansion of the Defiance outdoor refreshment area, making certain findings and determinations, and enacting regulations to that effect. Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Of course, we had the public hearing last week as well as the first reading, so I won't belabor the details, pending your questions, of course. And Ms. Mack is here, Mrs. Mack is here as well to answer some of those. But this ordinance basically expands our Dora district south to the edge of the viaduct to include a business down there. My recommendation is the full 3 readings so that we can comply with the statutory timelines in section 4301.82 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Well said. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. O'Donnell?
If there's no questions or anything, I'd like to make a motion to let lie.
We have a motion to let lie. Second, Mr. Waxler. Mrs. Crutch.
Yes.
Mr. Uresti.
Yes.
Mr. Engel.
Yes.
Mr. Hancock.
Yes.
Mr. Corbett.
Yes.
Mr. Mast.
Yes.
Mr. Waxler.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. I lost count through there. All right. We will let this lie until next week. Second up, an ordinance expanding a revitalization district within the city of Defiance pursuant to section 4301.81 Ohio Revised Code. Mr. O'Donnell.
Mr. President, basically everything I said about the last ordinance applies here, except we're dealing with section 4301.81 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. O'Donnell? Mr. Waxler?
No further questions, I make a motion to let lie, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
thank you.
Motion to let lie. Second, Mr. Engel. Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mr. Uresti?
Yes.
All right. We will let that lie as well. Third up, an ordinance amending ordinance number 8295 by approving a change order to the contract for the resurfacing of Bronson Park, Kingsbury Park, and Riverside Cemetery and declaring an emergency. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you may have gleaned from the caption of this ordinance, This is not an approval of a new contract, rather it's a change order, which is an amendment or modification of an existing contract. And the Ohio Supreme Court has ruled that municipalities do not need to competitively bid change orders, no matter the amount, provided that the unit price in the contract is, as originally contemplated, is not changing. And in fact, really only the Board of Control needs to change these. However, there were some reasons that we are bringing this to you tonight. Particularly, this legislation reallocates funding from the mastic treatment program that you had approved in this year's budget, late last year. You had approved about $125,000 for that program. What we learned as the bids came in is the value of the, I would say, the longevity of our streets that the mastic treatment provided. The costs that were coming in from the bids just did not justify undertaking that, given the 12-year average lifespan of our streets. So what we're proposing tonight is to reallocate some of that funding to a project that you've already approved. It's, in particular, it's the Riverside Cemetery and Kingsbury Park resurfacing. We would just add about $100,000 more to that, $100,196.70 more of that, to be exact. And so this ordinance authorizes the administrator to execute and pay that change order amount.
Mrs. Crutch?
In the cemetery, is that the whole cemetery? I mean, or is it gonna be certain sections of the roads?
Yeah,
It's not all of it, Mrs. Crutch.
It's not
some.
all of it?
Yep.
I know I've had a couple of people call that were saying that they would really like to have all of it, and that's why I just wondered.
Not this
It would
year.
be nice to put it.
Mr. Waxler?
So the additional 100,000 is for what again, Sean? Is that costing that much more to do this?
we're adding that much more in value to these projects from what you had originally budgeted for the mastic treatment program. We're proposing to axe that and apply more, pave more at Kingsbury and Riverside Cemetery.
So where's the money, where was that gonna be used at?
For the mastic treatment around the city, for the city streets.
We were gonna do some mastic at Riverside Cemetery.
Correct, so you're saying we're not gonna do some streets now because we're putting it in the cemetery? Is that
No.
that's my question?
No,
No.
we were gonna do some mastic treatment at Riverside Cemetery. We're no longer gonna do that. The cost benefit just isn't there.
Okay.
It started to show up last year, Mr. Waxler. We were hoping when we bid it this year that the cost benefit would be there. It's still not there. So we're just not gonna do the mastic and apply that money towards additional asphalt paving,
Okay.
okay?
But our streets and everything's still the same as they were?
Nothing there has changed, that's
Okay.
correct.
Mr. Hancock?
No further discussion, motion to suspend and call.
If we have no further questions, we have a motion to suspend and call. Second, Mr. Corbett. Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mr. Aresti?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Motion to adopt.
We have a motion to adopt, Mrs. Crutch. Second, Mr. Corbett. Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mr. Aresti?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And Mrs. Crutch.
Yes.
All right. This ordinance is adopted. Number 4, an ordinance directing the city administrator to enter into a grant agreement for the property acquisition and wetland implementation at East River Drive and declaring an emergency. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the agreement with Ohio Department of Natural Resources for a wetland project on Old 424. Some of the provisions and the way the agreement is really structured is the first part of the agreement is the agreement with ODNR. The second portion is the scope of the work in Exhibit A. And the third piece of it is actually Exhibit B, which is the environmental covenants that go with the property. Just some highlights of the agreement itself. It is, we are to purchase this property by, before September 30th, 2021, which we're confident that that will happen. And the other thing is the project itself must be completed by December 31st of 2023. And we're confident that that can take place as well. We do have to hire a engineer to design and build this project. They will actually design and build it. I have with me tonight, I noticed that Jennifer English is out in the audience. Jennifer was, I would say, the main catalyst behind this program. She's worked very closely with representatives from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. She works very closely with the Nature Conservancy as well. And that partnership, along with the partnership with ODNR, I think will pay big dividends for us in the long run. I think that this project, and one of the reasons why we sort of gravitated towards it, is because if you look at our overall strategy in our consent order and our CSO program, I think we're very much interested in creating wetlands for nutrient reduction. This piece of legislation, along with some of the other things that we've done on this project, actually gives us a grant for $1.5 million. And I do believe that there's some in-kind services, Jennifer, as far as we might be able to get some wage reimbursement back for our own work on this as well. So we'll be getting reimbursed back as well for some of our work that we do on in-kind services. But I'm glad Jennifer's here. If anybody has any questions concerning this program and this grant, we'll be happy to entertain it.
Mr. Mast?
Just a generalized question on the final product. Is this gonna end up, is it gonna increase, I guess, the amount of mowing? Is there a lot of upkeep or maintenance that'll be?
No, I think there's very
required?
little maintenance, isn't there, Jennifer, on this? I mean, it's a wetland that's going to be used for filtering water, basically.
So it'll be, once the wetland is established, it should be pretty low maintenance. We did build in 2 years of maintenance into the grant funds. So it depends what the final construction will be. Like you said, we'll do a design build contract. So the conceptual drawing that we submitted isn't necessarily what the final product that we'll end up with, but it'll be a natural area, probably like tall grasses and maybe trees. That yet to be determined, but it would probably be mowed a few times, maybe 2 to 3 times a year, possibly less once it gets established and it's doing well. So,
Yeah. Will this be used as any kind of educational programs? Would there be like a lookout that they would look at the wetlands or see critters or whatever?
yeah, we hope so. So the environmental covenant has restrictions on, I think one of the things in it is that the sign can't be lit, but it does allow us to do signage and educational interpretive signs or things that we've done in other projects. And then it also allows, if we were to decide that we wanted to do any kind of boardwalk or passive recreation, those are all lookouts, things like that. Those are all available to us, not required.
Okay.
They wouldn't be covered by the grant.
I like that.
But yeah.
Mr. Hancock?
And the reason for the emergency is because of the grant application, is that correct?
Yeah, so this grant agreement will allow the city administrator to, will execute the grant agreement, ODNR will execute that, and then we'll proceed with the purchase agreement. And things move slowly in government, so we actually had hoped that we would be able to execute the purchase agreement by April 30th, and we're probably looking more towards the end of May by the time we get all the signatures and paperwork and things like that. So yeah, they're anxious to execute, and the current landowner will go ahead and farm the field as to their preference. I'm not sure what crop will be planted. So it's not so that we can start right away. It's really just so that we can enter into the agreement with ODNR and then have, they need to get the funds encumbered as part of their fiscal year, fiscal cycle.
Okay.
We have any other, Mr. Waxler?
No further questions, most suspended.
Motion to suspend and call.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast. Mr. Mast,
Yes.
Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
Yes.
Mr. Rusty.
Yes.
Mr. Corbett,
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch,
Yes.
Mr. Engel.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Mast. Second, Mr. Engel. Mr. Hancock,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
Yes.
Mr. Rusty,
Yes.
Mr. Corbett,
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch,
Yes.
Mr. Engel,
Yes.
and Mr. Mast.
Yes.
Ordinance is also adopted.
Thank you.
And lastly, an ordinance authorizing a consulting service agreement for the marketing and potential site development for the property located at 629 Arabella Street. Mr. O'Donnell.
Some of you may be aware that the city has been pursuing a property that was owned by the Defiance City Board of Education for some time now over on 629 Arabella Street. And this property included the Triangle Park 1918 building, as well as the former football field out in the back. And since we have closed on that property, and since then, and even before then, we've been bombarded with the question, what are we going to do with that property? And this ordinance tonight may help us answer that question. You may recall approving the mayor's appointments to an advisory committee to help us determine that question, and they've been very helpful so far, COVID notwithstanding. But there are limits to both what city staff and advisory committees can do, and for one, the advisory board members, that most of them have day jobs and have time demands and time constraints, or they run their own businesses. And also the city staff and the board members may not have those connections to potential end users and that a developer or a commercial realtor might have. So this ordinance proposes entering into a consulting services agreement with a firm that might help the city identify some of these end users or developers. The term for this agreement is 12 months from the date of execution. So this is regular order. So if it passed tonight or next week, it would be sometime mid to late June. I will point out there is a success fee, what they call a success fee, and that's 2% of the capital investment of any project during that 12-month period, plus 90 days afterwards. So in other words, if the city enters into a real estate transfer or closes on the real estate with an end user, or even executes a development agreement within that time period, that 12 months plus 90 days, so basically 15 months, right? Lawyer math. Then that success fee would kick in, and 2% of the capital investment of that project. The Board of Control, we see two advantages to that when compared to other consultants. Most consultants, you talk to them on the phone, and then you get like an $1,800 bill. This you don't have that. So I deal with law firms a lot, so I have to put up with that. So this is avoids that monthly or hourly fee. And then the other thing is, if nothing happens, we don't pay anything. So I mean that's an advantage there too. So pending your questions, that's all I have about this agreement.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, Mr. Rusty?
Was this consulting group recommended to the city, or how did we find
This was actually a referral initially, Mr. Uresti, from Jerry Hayes when he was still with the CIC. Robbie met with Mr. Hammond and Sabrina, his partner. It's been at least a year ago when we first met to discuss it. At that time, obviously, we didn't own the building. And we said we would get back with him. We've talked to him on several occasions. He's followed up. And so that's how he was, he came to us was through Jerry Hayes. I will add that something Mr. O'Donnell didn't mention was that we've also run this agreement by the board of the Defiance Foundation, since they have a dog in this fight, if you will. And they thought that this looked like a pretty good exercise as well.
I have a follow-up.
Sure.
I had a chance to look at the website for this group, and had a chance to see some of the presentations that Mr. Hammond did in some organizations around the state of Ohio. He seemed to be very knowledgeable and he's connected. And from reading the website, very knowledgeable in the private and public sector. And I like the background and expertise he potentially brings to this project. And I think it's going to be a good fit. I just need to know how he got to us, but I think he should do very well, and I support this ordinance. This is good.
Thank you. Mr. Engel?
Sean, if I understood you right, if it's 12 to 15 months, if nothing happens, we're not out any money, or is that true?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, there's no other billing schedule on this agreement.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Waxler?
This is that guy from Fort Wayne we talked to last time, talked about, correct?
This is the same group that we talked to in executive session a month or so ago. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, then we did, I remember talking to him, or we talked about it quite a ways back. Is he from Fort Wayne?
He's from Vermillion. His partner is from over in Indiana, Mr. Waxler. I
Okay.
can't tell you. for
Same
sure.
ones I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Right. Do we have any other questions for Mr. O'Donnell? Mr. Esty?
No questions, motion to suspend and call?
We have a motion to suspend and call. Second, Mr. Corbett? Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mr. Esty?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
And we have a motion to adopt.
Another second.
Mrs. Crutch, second. Mr. Corbett? Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mr. Esty?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Mast?
Yes.
And Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Right. And this ordinance is also adopted. There we go. With the issues of legislation addressed for this evening, you're available to have citizens come in and share their concerns. However, it looks like it's too nice of a night to visit with us. But did any members of City Council have any letters or emails that they were asked to read during City Council? I do not. All right. Just a reminder that today is the 11th. It's the second week of the month. Next Tuesday's the 18th. It's the third week of the month, so we'll be off, but we will reconvene on the 25th. Do we have a motion to adjourn for this evening? Motion to adjourn, Mr. Hancock. Second, Mr. Waxler. All those in favor of adjourning for this evening, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Have a good evening.
Been a while.